Hi, I'm Justin Kirk, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to make souls float out of your enemies and fly to your character. I also made this heart in Blender, these hearts here, I guess, the model anyway, and I'm going to post this in the comments for free. So if you guys want to like download this and put it into your game, you don't need to like tribute it or anything like that. I think it just looks really cool, so you're welcome to use it in your game if you want. I added a shader to this heart. I'll just show you. It's just a Fresnel effect. I have a Fresnel effect that goes into a gradient, and then that goes into the base color. The gradient just kind of looks like this. You can copy this if you want. You don't have to, but I'm gonna post this for free. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is actually make the soul. So if you right click at the bottom here, you can create a visual effect graph. If you don't have this option, you can enable it in the package manager. So if you go to the window option at the top, click package manager, you can type in the word visual. Make sure you have this set to Unity registry, not in project. And then there should be a visual effect graph option. Just press install at the bottom right, and then that will give you the option for the visual effect graph if you don't have it. After you've made your visual effect graph, you can just drag it into your scene on the left here. And then if you double click on it, it should zoom in on it. It starts really small. We're just gonna move this away from the origin because I have like a gizmo or something there and it's gonna be confusing. So let's just put it here for now. And we'll just drag it to the left. And then if you click on your soul tutorial at the bottom, if you double click this, it will open what's called a visual effect graph. And this is what we're actually gonna use to edit this. So let me just make this bigger. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is at the very bottom here where it says set size over life, I'm just going to delete these things. Set color over life, set size over life, those can both get deleted. Right now the particle that it's doing is the default particle, so we don't want that. I'm just going to use my fireball particle. I'm going to post this in the comments so you can download mine, or you could use the default particle if you want. That will look fine. It's going to be high bloom anyway, so you're barely going to be able to see the particle because the glow is going to overwrite the particle anyway. So you're not really going to see it that much anyway. But anyway, so what you need to do is right here where it says set velocity random, click on that and press spacebar and then type in the word sphere. There should be an option for set position arc sphere. Click on that one, and then this puts your particles into a sphere, obviously. So then we want to get this position. So if we right click over here in this space over here, we can create a node and just type in get position. Drag the position into a multiply node. Just change this to like 0.1. It doesn't need to be a lot. And then to drag this into another multiply node, and this is going to be -1. And then the bottom one can go into A, and then the top one can go into B. This is going to be 0.1 positive, and this is going to be -0.1 in the negative direction. I hope I didn't lose anyone yet. So then the next thing we need to do is change the output particle to world space. And then this will kind of actually start making it go a little bit crazy. And so this has a glitch, and I'm going to show you what that is in a second. Let me just, so change the constant spawn rate to 3000, and then change the capacity to 30,000. You can probably make this significantly higher than this, okay? These numbers are actually not that high. The particle system can, or sorry, the VFX graph can support like 1,000,000 particles at once, depending on your video card. So don't be worried about putting this like to such a high number. It's fine. You can put this however high you want to. It goes based on the capacity. So if you're not going to be using the capacity, make sure you don't just make it like 1,000,000 or something, because it actually allocates space for that in your VRAM. So you don't want to be making this number too big unless you're actually going to use it. So don't make this like 1,000,000. Just make it to a number where it will encapsulate the spawn rate, but not be too much. So you can see that this is just going sideways. So instead of it going in all of the directions, it's flat, and it's based on where you moved it in the world space. It's because we put this to world, but we're not putting this to, when it gets the position, it's getting the position of the arc sphere, which is in local space. So that's why it's making it flat. To fix this, all you have to do is go into these, and instead of putting it directly into B, you just change it to put it into X, Y, and Z. And then from here, you can put it into X, Y, Z as well. So when you do this, you can see that the particles are now going all the directions. They're not just going like in a flat based on like the position that like of the world, the local position. So the next thing you need to do is change the size of this. So right below set lifetime random, we can just press the space bar and just hit set size. When you do this by default, it's not random. So if you click on this, and on the right side in the inspector where it says random, just click this and click per component. Just change this to like 1 to 3. Make sure you're making this scaled for your game. Okay, my game has a very, very large scale, and if you're scaling it with the same numbers that I'm using, it might be way too big for your game. So I'm sure you could just eyeball this and just compare it to the size of the other objects that are in your game. The benefit of putting this in world space is when we actually move this object, the particles will follow it rather than being directly around it. So if this is in local space, you can see that it stays directly on the particle all the time, but we don't want that. We want it to follow the particle and just stay in world space while it's going. So this is pretty good. I might just make it a little bit more, maybe double, like to 2. And the size could, oh, you know what? Let's make it 3. Let's make it 5. Now 3 is good. And let's just turn this up from 3,000 to 15,000. And we're just gonna make this 100,000. Oh, I was moving the bounds, whoops. Okay, so the next thing we wanna do is just change the color of this. So if you click on this face camera plane, press spacebar on your keyboard, set color over life. So then if you click color, you can change the color of this. Now you can make this color however you want to. I'm just gonna turn up the intensity, which will make it glow. So I'm gonna make this really, really high at the start and really, really high at the end, so like 7. This is also based on the bloom. So if you're gonna have a global volume in your game, providing you're using URP, this is based on what you've set the bloom to here, okay? So if you find that this is really, really bright, you just have to mess with the intensity in your actual game. Or like there's 2 things that impact it. So just know that if you find this really bright or not bright enough, it's because your bloom settings and the global volume could be different than mine. So then in the middle of this, we're just gonna put 2 more keys and we're gonna make these black. So this will cut down on some of like the glowiness, and some of the particles can be black as well. So let me just turn this down. This is still too bright. So that's good, and then this needs to be turned down as well. Okay, feel free to experiment with different colors. So if you want to make this like red or something, that's fine too. I'll just show you what that looks like. So when you're dragging this around, you'll actually see the particles like a mixture of like red and white. So it really depends how you want your soul to look. I kind of like just having white, maybe gray in the middle or something like that. Maybe just like a darker, like so that all the particles aren't exactly the same. Okay, and we want the particles to actually be bigger. So let's just make this set size 1 to 5. Okay, that's really cool. Let's just change this to 0.2. Okay, one other thing to note is that if you want to change the actual, because the entire particle right now is the same color. So if you look at my fireball, you just double click on it so you can see it. You can see that there's like different parts of the fireball, but when you apply this color and the intensity to it, the entire thing becomes white and you can't see the detail on it. If you do want to see the detail on it, you have to apply a shader to it. I think it might be this one that I did. So let me just show you what that looks like. So if you sample, so you can right click and create a shader graph, and then you can apply this to the material for this. This is more for advanced people that already kind of know what they're doing. If you create a sample texture 2D and you saturate it, saturate just makes it so that the number is between 0 and 1, by the way, because the number could be it's between -1 and 1 for the sample texture. So if you don't saturate it, it will look wrong. So you take this and you take the alpha and saturate it, and then you put this into this gradient. You could change these colors to be white and red, and that way each part of this will be a different color. And then you just have to put the alpha of the main texture into this, and then the sample gradient can go into the emission and the base color. So if you want to change each individual part of the particle to have like it appear this, because I use this for my fireball or whatever, then you could do that. You could set like the middle to be black and then the edges to be white if you want to. I'm not going to do that because I kind of like the way that it looks with just the all one color. But for other things like my fireball, I did do that because it looks a lot cooler if the entire, like each section of the particle could look different and be a different color rather than having everything be the same color. We're not going to do that for this for right now because I think that it looks good, but just so you know that if you want to change like the individual rings of the fireball texture that I'm going to post, then you can definitely do that. This is looking really good for our soul. This might even look better than the one that I already have. So like I said, you can keep messing around with it and do whatever you want with it. It's pretty cool. So let's save this, and we're just going to dock it at the top. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is add a script to the soul. So we want the script to basically make the soul go directly up into the air and then float towards your character or whatever you want to. So this effect is used for a lot of games. So sometimes it's used, like for example, if you pick up a heart, the heart could fly in the air and then go over towards your hearts or whatever. So there's a lot of ways that you could use this effect, and it's really like, it's such a simple script to write. So what we need to do is right click at the bottom here and just create a C# script. You can just call this enemy soul script tutorial. Okay, and then if you just drag this onto your soul, and mine put 2 for some reason, I'm not sure why, but so then we just, after you've dragged it onto your soul, you just want to double click on the script, and then we just need to write the script. So we can leave the methods that are here. So the first thing you want to do is just get the rigid body. So in the start, we can just type in RB. Oh, it auto-completed for us, perfect. So then we also need a target position. So that's going to be a vector 3. So the initial target position is actually going to be wherever the soul is, and then in the air above the soul. So we want it to float directly upwards first. So we're just going to set the target position as the position of the rigid body plus new vector 3, and then 0. I'm going to put 150 here. You can put whatever number you want. 150 is actually like a really high number. Like I said, my scale for my game is really massive, so if yours is not massive, this might send it flying way high up in the air. So you might not want to use this high of a number, but you know, test it and see what happens, and then you can go from there. You could just change update to fixed update, create a variable for the current time. So we're just going to do an integer, and then every frame we're going to increment this integer. So if the current time, oops, GPU friends, what the heck? If current time is less than 200, so for the first 200, this isn't actually seconds, this is like frames. So if this is less than 200, it's going to be still going upwards in the air. I must have spelled this wrong. Yeah. So for the first 200 frames, it's going to be going directly upwards towards our target. So we want to use lerp to do this. We don't want to just move it immediately because it will just teleport there and that will be boring. So we want to actually have it move slowly over time. So we're going to create another vector, which is going to be like the temporary target. And we'll call it smooth move as vector3.lerp. And then we're going to take the position of the rigid body. So this is the start position. Then this is the target position, and then time delta time. So let me just do 0.8. Okay, and then we'll set the position. Oops. Just move like this. Okay, so what lerp does is basically this is the first position, so where it already is in the game, and then this is where we're going to, which is above the character, and then this is how far it's moved. So time delta time is the amount of time since the script has elapsed. So this will start at 0.8 of this, and it will slowly move towards the target position, but only this fast. So this is the speed at which it's going to move from the first point to the second point. And then after it gets to the second point, so if the current time is greater than 200, then we want it to chase our player around. Why do I keep spelling this wrong? Then we want it to chase our player around. Oh, I spelled... No, that's right. Anyway, so then we'll do the same thing, but the target is going to be different. Instead of using the target position, we're going to use our player's position. Now, if you don't have a player position, you could just put a sphere into the scene and then use the position of the sphere, or you can pick an object that's in your game and use the position of that. I'm using the position of my player, which I've added to this static class. So I have a player static class, and then when I initialize my game, I set... Hang on, I'll show you. When I initialize my game, so I have this script running first, and when I initialize my game, I set player position to be position, which is inputted through a serialized field. Now, if you don't have this, like I said, you could just have a sphere in your scene. Well, let me just do it. Let me just actually put a sphere in the game so that that way you're able to replicate this and it's not as confusing. So let's just make a sphere. Well, I'm just gonna make it 15 by 15 by 15. You probably don't need to do that. Probably 1 by 1 will look fine for you. And let's just put this right here. Actually far away from the souls. Why not? In our script, we need to get that. We need to get the position of this sphere. So what we can do is just have a public game object up at the top. We'll just call this the sphere. And then if we save this, we can drag the sphere into our script. So you could just drag the sphere like this into that slot. And then instead of using player position dot position, which is what I'm using, and which you should be using something like this. Hopefully you're putting this in an actual game and you're not just doing this for like, I mean, you could just copy my project if you want to, but it's cooler if you're actually putting this into your game. So this will become the sphere dot transform dot position. Okay. So basically when the soul is instantiated, it will immediately float up into the air and then go towards your player or whatever you've put into this slot. So let's run it and I'll show you. Oh, okay, there's no rigid, okay, so we didn't put a rigid body on our soul. Okay, so your soul, in order for you to move the rigid body, you actually have to put a rigid body on it. So we can do that, and don't use gravity. Okay, so you can see it floating up in the air, and then it goes to, oh, the sphere, right? Okay, so this didn't disappear when it hit it. So what we want to do is when it actually gets to the destination, we want it to disappear. So we'll do on collision enter if the collision dot name, or sorry, game object dot name is equal to sphere. Then we could do game object destroy game object. So now when it hits the sphere, it will disappear. And also I noticed that my settings are like making it not, it's not what, like this number is too low now. I changed the number to try to make it less crazy, but I don't think I needed to do that. So I'm just changing it back to 0.1. I was looking at it in here and I was thinking that that looks too crazy for it, but I don't think it is now. So you see it floats up in the air and then it goes to the sphere. Oh, duh. Okay, I figured out why it's not working. This is pretty obvious. So the Soul tutorial, this also needs to have a collider on it, or else it can't collide with the sphere. So just add a sphere collider. We just want this one to actually be the bigger one. So let's make this a little bit, oops. Actually, just change the radius to like 10. Because we want it to disappear when it gets close. The way that LERP works is it kind of gets slower as it gets closer. So if it doesn't catch up to it, it won't disappear. So we want it to hit ahead of time. So let's run this one more time. Okay, so one last thing I want to do here is I just want to change the Soul to be more bright than this. It doesn't have the same effect that mine has. So let me just change these to be normal. Actually, let me just get rid of them altogether. And then let me just see how bright that is. Hang on. Because I noticed that like it doesn't, it's not the same as the one that I already have. So as it's going across, it doesn't look as crazy. Let me just go back to this for a second. So while it's flying, it doesn't appear to be going as insane. Let me just put this to 1. That's gonna be too much. Oh well. Let's just see. Hang on. Okay, so this is the final result that I've got. So I changed some things to make this happen. So at the beginning it was like way too crazy, and this could still be a little bit less. So in the tutorial what I found is that, or in the VFX graph, what I found is that having a very low number is better for this. So 0.02 is what I'm using. And then I just changed the radius of the sphere to be much larger so that it's more spread out as it's flying across the room. You could obviously spend more time on this and make it however you want. Also, you have to change the bounds padding to be a larger number. So when it goes flying in the air, the camera doesn't cull it because the size of it is larger. If you leave this on the default, when it goes above your screen, all of the particles will disappear and it kind of looks bad. Aside from that, I added a multiply size over life. So this is the curve that I'm using. So you could just add this exact same one if you want, or you can change it however you like. And then I changed this so that the beginning is transparent, but the end is actually full opacity, and then I changed the color to be 3.5 intensity at the end, and then this is only 0.7 at the beginning. So I really like the results that I got here. The one that I have in my actual Soul that I made before is I spent a very long time messing with the settings. I could spend hours just I'm not going to do that again because I already did that with my last one, but yeah, I think that this looks really good. Okay, so the last thing is that you need to know how to actually instantiate this. So when your enemy dies or whatever happens where you want this to appear, you need to know how to do that. So what you can do is you can drag this soul into the bottom part. This will create what's called a prefab. So this is something that you can spawn over and over again without having, like, it's a prefab, so you can use this over and over again in your game. So I've attached a script to my sphere, and what we need to do is have this prefab get added. So we can just type in game object go here, or actually let's just call this soul here and make it public. And then what we can do is, what we can do is we can drag this soul prefab into this spot. And then what we need to do is instantiate the soul every time we press a button. So in the script, we can just write if input dot get key, and then key code. We'll just make this B. I've used like almost all the characters in my game, so you could make it whatever character key you want to. And then we need to instantiate this object. So we can just write instantiate soul. We could just leave it like that, I'm pretty sure. So when we press B, it should create a soul, and the soul should fly to our sphere and then destroy itself. So when we start the game, we have the soul that's already in the scene, but you're not going to have a soul in your scene by default. You're going to make the soul appear when you kill an enemy or something like that. So right now we'll have it when we press B, it creates another soul. Now you can see it created a lot of souls because we don't have anything to stop it from creating duplicates. Also, these souls don't have the sphere in the game object, so let me just go into this. Okay, so you can't put the game object like that in there because it's a prefab, so you need to change it so that you can just set the sphere to GameObject.find sphere. And again, we need to limit the number of souls that can be spawned at once. So that's the default sphere, but now when I press B, you can see a bunch more souls appeared. There's no limitation, so let me just make it so that we'll just set a Boolean value. Already soul is false. Okay, essentially what this will do is we have a Boolean value and we're checking the Boolean value. So if it's false, it'll allow you to spawn a soul, and then this will invoke this method after 2 seconds. That's what invoke does. It does the method after this period of time. So after 2 seconds, it will allow you to spawn a soul again. It's just giving it a cooldown. This is, again, you should use a state machine for whatever you're doing in your game. You shouldn't use this, but this is just for an example. So it's fine. We're just gonna use that for right now. So this should allow us to press B and spawn 1 soul that will get drawn to the sphere. Obviously you should use a player instead of your sphere. Oh, this is the on collision enter. What am I doing? So this needs to actually go into, let me just cut this. This has to go in the sphere script. I don't know why I put it in the other script. I don't know, I put it in the collision method. That was just a mistake. Hang on. Okay, so now when we press B, it should only spawn 1 soul. There we go. And you can only do it once every 2 seconds. Alright guys, that's going to be it for the day. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe. The first 1,000 people that subscribe are going to get a free copy of the game. They're also going to get an exclusive spell card. So you can see in the bottom left here, I just picked up a bunch of cards, and what it is you press a button on the keyboard and it uses the spell. So for example, this spell is Chain Lightning. So when I press R, it uses it, and then I can click somewhere and it actually uses the Chain Lightning. Or this one is Lightning, and it does the spell and it just kills everything in the room or whatever. But like I said, yeah, the first 1,000 people that subscribe are going to get a exclusive spell card that nobody else is going to be able to get when I release the game. But yeah, like I said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.